Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive. We're going to be talking about something that can be really tough, but also really important for all of us as pet owners.
Yeah.
And that's understanding how to care for our cats as they get older and reach the end of their lives. It's not always easy to think about these things.
They can be really emotional.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But we actually think that by learning more about it, we can actually make the whole experience less scary and overwhelming for both you and your cat.
Absolutely. I totally agree. When we understand what's happening both physically and emotionally, it helps us be there for our cats in a better way during those last moments.
Yeah, for sure. So for this deep dive, you shared some great resources about recognizing the signs that a cat is nearing the end of their life and also how to care for them with a lot of compassion. And so we're going to start right there. What are some of the main things we might start to see in our cats physically as they approach those final days?
Well, one of the things that often becomes pretty noticeable is weight loss. You might see that your cat's spine and ribs start to stick out a little more, or maybe their fur isn't as shiny as it used to be.
Yeah, I've noticed that with my older cat too.
It's pretty common.
Yeah.
And it can happen for a bunch of different reasons, like they might not have as much of an appetite, or they might be having trouble digesting food properly, or sometimes it's even because their muscles are starting to weaken as their body starts to shut down.
It's so hard to see them lose that energy and playfulness that they used to have. The information you sent also talked about changes in how much energy they have and how well they can move around.
Yeah, that's right. As they get weaker, they tend to sleep more, they don't play as much, and they might have a hard time jumping or climbing like they used to. Even their walk might get stiff or wobbly, and sometimes they might start having accidents outside the litter box because they can't get there fast enough, or they're having a tough time getting into a comfortable position.
Oh, wow. So it's not just about them slowing down. It's like their whole world is kind of getting smaller too, right? So what can we do to make their environment, like at home, more comfy and easier for them to get around as all this happens?
That's a great question. I think it's really helpful to try to make a peaceful space for them, like a little haven away from all the noise and activity in the house. Give them soft bedding that's easy to get to, and maybe even think about putting ramps or little steps so they can still reach their favorite spots, like a windowsill or a comfy chair. And make sure their food and water bowls are close by and easy to reach, even if they're having a hard time bending down.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So it's like we're kind of adapting their world to make things a little easier for them.
Exactly. It's all about trying to anticipate their needs and then making those small changes that can make a big difference in how comfortable they feel.
The information you sent also mentioned something about cats grooming themselves less as they get older. I've noticed my cat doing that too. She doesn't seem as interested in keeping her fur clean as she used to be.
Yeah, that's definitely a common thing with older cats. Sometimes it's because they just can't reach certain areas to groom themselves anymore, or they just don't have the energy or flexibility to do it as well as they used to. You can help them out by giving them a gentle brushing every now and then.
Oh, that's a good idea.
It not only helps to keep their coat clean, but it's also good for their circulation, and it can just be a really comforting bonding experience for both of you.
Yeah, it's like we're stepping in to give them that care and attention that they can't really give themselves anymore. Even though it seems like a small thing, I bet it means a lot to them.
I think so too. Those little acts of kindness can really go a long way in making them feel loved and cared for, especially during a time when they're feeling more vulnerable.
Speaking of changes, you mentioned some behavioral things to look out for too. Like maybe they start to withdraw from people, or they're not as interested in playing anymore, or they might even avoid their favorite spots. What does all that usually mean?
Those are all really good things to pay attention to. They can be subtle at first, but often those kinds of changes are a sign that something's not quite right. It might just be that their bodies are getting weaker and they don't have the same energy to do the things they used to love, but it could also mean that they're feeling uncomfortable or even in some pain, which makes it hard for them to move around and interact.
So even a cat who was always really social might start to become more like a loner.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not because they don't care about you anymore. It's more like their body is just going through a lot and they need some space.
Okay, I get it. So it's important to give them space when they need it, but also to still be there for them with affection and gentle encouragement.
Yes, exactly.
The information you shared also mentioned some more serious signs that we should watch out for, like if they have trouble breathing, or if they're vomiting a lot, or having diarrhea, or maybe even some swelling. Those sound like we need to get them to the vet right away.
You're absolutely right. Those can be warning signs that something more serious is going on, like maybe their kidneys or liver or heart aren't working as well as they should. It's really important to contact your vet as soon as you see any of those signs, because Getting early treatment can sometimes make a big difference, even in the later stages of a cat's life.
So we need to be really observant and keep an eye out for both those little changes and the bigger, more obvious ones in their behavior and how they're feeling physically. Now that we've talked about how to recognize the signs, it's probably a good time to switch gears and talk about how we can actually help them feel more comfortable and cared for when they're going through this.
Yeah.
What are some of the main ideas behind palliative care for cats, and how can we actually do that at home?
So palliative care is kind of like a shift in our thinking. Instead of focusing on trying to cure them, we focus on making them as comfortable as we can.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? What are some of the things we can do to help them?
Well, we've already talked about some of them, like making their environment comfortable and easy for them to get around. But there's a lot more we can do too, like managing their pain. Your vet can give you medications to help relieve any pain they might be feeling, so they don't have to suffer in their last days.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Of course, we don't want them to be hurting. What about their food? Should we change what we're feeding them during this time?
If your cat's still eating, try to give them food that's easy to digest and high in calories, and make sure it smells and tastes good to them. You might have to warm it up a little to make it smell stronger, or try different textures to see what they like best. But definitely talk to your vet about any diet changes you're thinking about, because they can give you advice on the best food for your cat's specific condition.
So it's about making sure every bite counts and giving them the nutrients they need in a way that's gentle on their tummy.
Right, exactly.
What about keeping them clean? You mentioned that grooming can be tough for older cats.
Yeah, for sure. In addition to brushing them, you might need to help clean their eyes and ears. And if they're having accidents, you might have to clean their behind too. Just use warm water and a soft cloth and be as gentle and patient as you can. Remember, this isn't just about keeping them clean. It's also a way to show them you love them and that you're there for them when they're feeling vulnerable.
It's like we're becoming their caregivers, in every sense of the word, attending to their needs with so much love and compassion. I'm curious, are there any common misunderstandings people have about caring for cats at the end of their lives? Like, are there any myths you can debunk?
Oh yeah, definitely. One of the biggest ones is that there's nothing we can do once a cat reaches that final stage. But that's just not true at all. You know, like we've been talking about, there's actually so much we can do to make them comfortable and ease their pain and just create a loving and supportive environment for them.
So it's not about giving up, it's more about shifting our focus to a different kind of care.
Precisely. And another misconception is that putting a cat to sleep, euthanasia, is always the wrong thing to do. But you know, sometimes it can actually be the kindest, most loving choice we can make for our furry friends. It's about preventing them from suffering needlessly and letting them go peacefully when their quality of life isn't good anymore.
That's a really tough topic.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that needs to be discussed. I think a lot of pet owners really struggle with that decision.
They do, and it's never easy. But it's a decision that you should always make with the help of your vet. They can consider your cat's individual situation and help you make the most compassionate choice.
It sounds like having that open communication with your vet is super important during this whole process, not just at the very end.
Oh, absolutely. They're not just there for the medical stuff. They can also give you emotional support and help you understand all the complicated parts of end-of-life care and guide you to make the best choices for your cat.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive. We've talked about how to recognize the signs that a cat might be nearing the end of their life. And we've explored a bunch of practical things we can do to make them comfortable and care for them during those last days. But I think there's another important aspect to all of this that we haven't really touched on yet, and that's the emotional side of things for us as owners.
You're absolutely right. Saying goodbye to a pet that you love is never easy. It's filled with all these complicated emotions, sadness, grief, guilt, even sometimes a sense of relief. And I think it's really important to have space to talk about all of that.
I agree. And that's exactly what we're going to do in the next part of our deep dive. We're going to talk about how to deal with all those emotions, how to find peace in saying goodbye, and how to honor the amazing life of our furry friends.
It's a conversation that gets to the heart of what it means to have a bond with an animal. And I think it's going to resonate with anyone who's ever loved and lost a pet. As we start this next part of our conversation, I just want to say that talking about loss and grief can be really, really hard.
Yeah, definitely.
It's something so personal and, you know, there's no right way or wrong way to feel.
It's true. And sometimes I think when we try to be strong for everyone else, we kind of end up pushing those feelings down.
Yeah.
But letting ourselves grieve and feel that sadness is actually an important part of healing.
Absolutely. Grief is just a natural response to loss, you know? It shows how much we loved and connected with our cats. And it can feel super overwhelming sometimes. But it's important to remember that those feelings, they do get easier over time.
In the information you sent, it talked about finding peace and saying goodbye. What does that actually look like when it comes to our cats?
It means making that final transition as loving and peaceful as we can. It's about being there with them, comforting them and reassuring them, letting them know we love them no matter what, even as their bodies are failing.
It's like we're creating a safe and loving space for them during that last journey.
That's a really beautiful way to put it, and it's also about honoring that special bond you had with them.
I think a lot of pet owners feel guilty during this time. We wonder if we did enough, or if we made the right choices, or if we missed any signs.
Yeah, I hear that a lot.
How can we deal with those feelings of guilt?
Guilt is definitely a normal part of grieving, but it's so important to remember that you did the best you could with what you knew at the time. It's easy to look back and second-guess ourselves, but try to focus on the love and care you gave your cat throughout their whole life.
So we need to give ourselves the same compassion and understanding that we gave to our cats.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of thinking about what you could have done differently, focus on all those wonderful memories and the joy your cat brought you.
The materials also mentioned cherishing those last moments. What are some ways to do that, even when it's so hard to see them getting weaker?
Even in those last few days, you can still make special memories and really connect with them. Spend time doing the things they love, even if it's just lying next to them, petting them, and talking to them in a soothing voice.
Those little moments of just being present with them seem so important.
They really are. And don't be afraid to tell them how much they mean to you. Let them feel your love and presence.
Yeah, like those feelings go beyond just words. They can feel it in our touch and the way we talk to them. What about taking pictures or videos of those last moments? Is there a way to do that without getting caught up in the sadness?
Taking photos or videos or even writing down your favorite memories can be a really beautiful way to honor your cat's life and keep their memory alive. Those mementos become really special and they can bring you comfort later on.
It's like having a way to remember and hold on to the love you shared, even when they're not physically there anymore.
Exactly. And talking about those memories with other people who loved your cat can be really healing too.
It's like by sharing those stories, we keep their memory alive.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And it shows just how much our cats impact our lives and our hearts.
We've been talking about how hard it is to say goodbye, but eventually we do have to face the practical side of things. How do we make those decisions about when and where to let go?
Those are some of the toughest decisions, and there's no easy answer. The most important thing is to talk openly and honestly with your vet. They can help you understand how your cat is doing, what to expect, and what options you have. Like there's in-home euthanasia where your cat can pass away peacefully at home surrounded by their loved ones, or you can say goodbye at the vet's office.
I imagine there are pros and cons to both.
Definitely. In-home euthanasia lets your cat pass away in a familiar place surrounded by the people they love. But it can also be really hard emotionally for some family members. Saying goodbye at the vet's office is more clinical, which might feel less personal, but it can also be less overwhelming for some people.
So it's about choosing what feels best for your cat and what you can handle emotionally.
Yeah, exactly. And remember, it's okay to ask for help during this time. Lean on your friends, family, or other pet owners who've gone through this. Talking about how you feel and sharing your grief with others can really help you heal.
It's like creating a circle of support around ourselves, so we know we're not going through this alone. What about after our cat is gone? How can we cope with the loss in a healthy way and keep their memory alive?
First of all, give yourself time to grieve. There's no set time for healing, and everyone goes through it differently. Just let yourself feel whatever comes up: sadness, anger, guilt, even sometimes relief. Don't judge yourself for those feelings. They're all a natural part of grieving.
So we have to be kind to ourselves and honor our own way of grieving.
Exactly. And then find ways to remember your cat that feel right for you. Some people create a special memorial, like a garden, a photo album, or a piece of art. Others donate to an animal shelter or volunteer to help other animals in their cat's name. And some people find comfort in looking at pictures, sharing stories, or just thinking about all the joy their cat brought them.
It's about finding our own way to keep their spirit alive.
That's it. And if you're having a really hard time coping with the loss, don't be afraid to reach out to a professional. A therapist who specializes in pet loss can give you support and help you through it.
That's a good reminder that asking for help is okay. It shows strength, not weakness.
I agree. Taking care of yourself emotionally is just as important as taking care of your physical health, especially during difficult times like this.
We've talked a lot about how hard it is emotionally to say goodbye. But there's another side to this that we haven't really talked about yet. And that's the legacy our cats leave behind.
You're so right. Their impact on our lives goes way beyond just the time we had with them. They teach us about love, loyalty, resilience, and how to find joy in simple things. And those lessons stay with us long after they're gone.
It's like their paw prints stay on our hearts forever, and their spirit continues to inspire us. It's amazing, isn't it? How these little creatures who can seem so independent and like they want to be left alone most of the time, how they actually become such a huge part of our lives.
They really do. Yeah, and even when they're not with us anymore, it's like they're still there.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Like you still remember all those little things about them, their personality, their cuddles, the way they used to greet us at the door. It's like those memories become a part of who we are.
Yeah, it's true. And sometimes it's those little everyday things that we did with them that we miss the most. Like just having them around or hearing them purr when they were napping next to us. Or the way they would follow us from room to room, like they always wanted to be close to us.
Yeah, those little things become so precious.
They do.
It's like they taught us a whole new way of loving. Someone who didn't need big, showy displays of affection, but who understood those little signals and whose moods and needs we could sense and respond to.
That's a great way to put it. They really did teach us about that kind of love. And they also taught us about living in the moment, just being present without judging or expecting anything. And maybe if we think about those lessons, we can learn to live that way too, to appreciate those simple things and to be grateful for the people and animals in our lives.
That's a beautiful thought. It's like even though they're gone, they're still teaching us and helping us grow.
I like that. And there are lots of ways we can honor the memory of our cats.
What?
Some people build a special memorial, like a little garden, or they make a photo album or a piece of art.
Oh yeah, I've seen people do that.
It's a nice way to remember them. Some people donate to an animal shelter or volunteer their time to help other animals.
Those are great ideas.
Yeah, it's about finding a way to turn our sadness into something good, something that helps keep their memory alive in a way that feels right for us. And sometimes it's as simple as just remembering those lessons they taught us and trying to be more patient and present and aware of the people around us.
Yeah, I think that's a really beautiful way to honor them.
I think so too. It really shows how much of an impact they had on our lives. They taught us about love and loss and how important it is to cherish every moment. And they reminded us that even when we're heartbroken, there's still beauty and connection and hope in the world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into understanding end-of-life care for our cats, what's the one thing you really want our listeners to take away from this?
Well, I want them to remember that even though saying goodbye is one of the hardest things we have to do, the love we shared with our cats and the joy they brought into our lives and all those lessons they taught us, those things will stay with us forever. And by remembering them and carrying their spirit with us, we keep part of them alive in our hearts.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I think it gives us a sense of comfort and hope, even when you're feeling sad. So to everyone listening, you're not alone in this. There are resources and support groups and people who care who want to help. And as we close today, let's take a moment to remember all the amazing cats who have touched our lives.
Yeah, and may their memory be a blessing.
May we all find peace and healing in the memory of their purrs.
Absolutely.
Until next time, may you find comfort in the memories you shared and find peace in this journey.